Hi, Jennifer Stuart here, and I'm so excited to have with me today Jessica Joelle Alexander as part of my Peace and Joy parenting series. So, Jessica is an author, a Danish parenting expert, an international speaker, and cultural researcher. Her work has been featured in Time, Salon, The Atlantic, The New York Times, Vanity Fair, NPR, Huffington Post, and the Greater Good Science Center at Berkley. It's a long list there, Jessica. Her book, The Danish Way of Parenting, What the Happiest People in the World Know About Raising Confident, Capable Kids, has been published in over 25 countries. She is a spokesperson for the Lego Group and is coming out with a new book about education, my passion, of course. Jessica speaks 4 languages and lives with her Danish husband and 2 children in Europe. So that is amazing. Quite the resume there, Jessica. How are you doing today?
I'm doing very well. How are you?
I'm good. I'm so glad to be chatting with you. You share so many of my same beliefs around education and children and parenting. So it's definitely fun to have you on here. So one thing that I don't know that a lot of people in our audience know about yet is this idea of the Danish way of parenting. So you could kind of give us an overview of what does that mean, and how is it different from kind of the traditional approach in the U.S. where I'm located?
Well, I'll just give a little bit of a background story so that people understand where the idea came from. And so I'm American, but I'm married to a Dane for 17 years now. Wow. And I didn't initially know for sure that I even wanted to have children.
Okay.
I was just kind of scared about the idea and how to be a parent. And then I met my husband and we went to Denmark, and I saw children in Denmark, and they are so well behaved, so serene, happy. You never hear, honestly. And I told my husband that if I could get a guarantee that I would have a Danish child, then we could have kids tomorrow.
A guarantee on a kid. That's
yeah. No, but I really, it was something that really struck me as being very different. And so over the years, then I actually didn't get pregnant for another 7 years. So we had a lot of time, but I saw a lot of Danish families and Danish parents, and I was always really, really struck by how they parented. But it wasn't until I had my own children and I had studied parenting and read a bazillion books and I was super prepared that I found myself always going to my Danish family and friends for advice, and I always preferred it over the books.
Okay.
And this went on for years.
Uh-huh.
And then one day we were on vacation and I was listening to my husband Reframing, which we'll talk about, with my daughter, which for me was a very Danish way of parenting. Okay. Right? And at the same time, I was reading the newspaper where it said that Denmark had been voted as the happiest country in the world. And I never heard that before.
Yeah.
And then I looked into it and I found that they had been 40 years in a row, always in the top 3 as the happiest country in the world. And I'm listening to my husband alter my daughter's language in a way that I felt would affect her for her whole life.
Wow.
To be happier.
Uh-huh.
And I mean, a light bulb went off in my head and I was like, oh my God, this is a thing. Maybe it's because of the way they parent their children that they grow up to be so happy.
Right.
Because
Definitely.
happy kids become happy people. And so that's where the idea originated. And it's a very simple acronym that I lay out in the book with another Dane, which is parent. So it is a very simple, really simple structure for what the Danes do, the parenting style. And but I knew that if it resonated with me so deeply, I was so convinced parent. And 25 countries later, I think it has. And I really truly think. Oh no, are you there?
I
Okay, I truly think that it's honestly because a lot of it is just really common sense.
Okay, sure.
No, it's really so simple, but I think because Denmark is a very uncommercialized society, they have been a bit impervious to fads.
Okay. Yeah,
Do you know what I mean?
yes, no, definitely. I think that's one of the biggest issues with parenting is it's confusing. I mean, there's do it this way, do it that way, do it. And so it almost sounds like your method is listening to your heart and your intuition a little bit more as opposed to what everybody else is telling you to do.
Yeah, actually, I think it was the simplicity of it, and also that I literally saw the children,
Right.
in person, and I saw this whole country in person, where really they truly were calm and happy, and it was so simple. And actually, it was such a relief for me because I stopped looking at all of the other books, and I stopped being confused, and
Yeah.
I started saying, wait, I think this really works. I think um, their idea, we'll talk about this later, but for example, their idea of play, you
Yes.
know, it's never gone out of style in Denmark. It's
Oh,
never been replaced with something else. Wooden toys. It sounds silly, but
no, it's not. It's
that's
open-ended.
that's never gone out of that's there's never been an influx of a million other kinds of toys. For them, wooden toys have always been the best.
Yeah. No, I
So in
love
a way, yeah, in a way, it's a tried and tested long-term um, method, I guess, or philosophy. I always call it a philosophy because I think it's more a philosophy of living, and I think that it helps people, not just parents.
yeah.
A lot of people say that it's made them happy. There's a lot of chapters where it's made them feel happier as a person, even if they're not parents.
Sure, sure. Well, I think it's a lot more, like you said, calm and peaceful. And yeah, I mean, instead of having all these gadgets and these noises, and I mean, I see that with the kids that I work with, they come in and we have free play in the classroom. And so many of them don't know what to do during that time. They feel like that time is supposed to be like the most fun part of the day. They are like upset, like I don't know what where's the video game, or where's the instructions, or where's the, it's like, no, there's all these, there's the dress up, there's the kitchen, there's the Play-Doh, the blocks, the Legos, and
Yeah,
yeah, no, I see that definitely. I
but
love
it's
that.
but I think it's a big mind shift. So for me also, because I'm come from the American mentality, so I was also very sort of obsessed with educational things, and I was thinking about schooling before I had the children. My husband used to joke, maybe we should get pregnant first before you think about education.
Yeah.
Um, but so I felt I totally understand like this kind of pressure. And it took a lot for me to say, wait a minute, no, I'm going to look at this differently
Definitely.
because something is working there.
Right.
And it's so funny now to see how, I don't know if you saw now, the American Association of Pediatrics has just come out with a report the same day as the Lego report that I was just working on.
Oh,
Um,
I haven't seen that one yet. What did that one say?
it's just came out last week, the same day as the Lego Play Well report. And it's saying now that they want pediatricians to prescribe play,
Oh, I love that. Oh, wonderful.
to
Yeah, no,
prescribe free play. That's what they
yeah,
want them to do. That's so I think we're going back to it, but it's
hopefully.
yeah, it's difficult to sort of wind things back when we're so sometimes frenetic,
Right.
but I think it's really makes a big difference.
Well, yeah, there's been a lot of pressure on parents, I think, to make sure they know their ABCs and their numbers and everything when they're young. So parents are sometimes spending the time they have working on that with these itty bitty kids instead of having them grow and develop into being creative and being thinkers. And there's been a lot of studies, but I think they're often overlooked, that kids who play more and are more creative are going to be better in academics later. So yeah.
Yeah, and I mean the skills now that they're saying that you need for jobs in 2020 or 2020, the World Economic Forum has released the top 10 skills, And, 4 or 5 of those are taught through play.
Yeah. Oh, that's amazing.
So I think it's just going to take a little bit more time, but I really believe it's on the horizon now.
Oh, I hope so. I hope so. That's
Yeah, me
really
too.
wonderful. So, one of the other things I was going to ask you about is you talk a lot about self-esteem for kids too. And I think that's another really big topic, because I see a lot of times kids are constantly looking to the parent or the teacher all the time with everything they do. Like, is this okay? Is this okay? Is this okay? Instead of just being and enjoying themselves and, developing in their own way. So for you, I mean, why do you think that self-esteem with little kids is going to be more important than academics? I guess that kind of goes along with what we were talking about.
Well, this is something I was just talking about last week. So I worked with a very well-known parenting expert in Denmark called Jesper Juhl.
Okay.
And he has literally sort of made the foundation for a lot of the parenting today and the education. And he talks a lot about the difference between self-esteem and self-confidence.
Okay.
And this, for me, has been one of the most enlightening concepts. I talk about it in my next book, the education book, because I think it's profound. So basically, a lot of us think that self-esteem and self-confidence are sort of the same thing.
Sure.
But in Denmark, it's a very different thing.
Okay.
And already from like the beginning of school, a lot of headmasters will talk a lot to parents about the differences and how we need to focus more on self-esteem and self-confidence. So let me explain what the difference is. I've talked it up. So self-confidence is basically the things you're good at. Okay. So all the things you can do, right? So if you get good grades, maybe you're popular, you're good at sports, all of the things that show you're good at something. Okay, that's self-confidence. Self-esteem is more about how you feel for just who you are.
Okay.
So you're just okay with yourself. So you can have self-confidence and no self-esteem.
Okay.
Or little self-esteem, right? Or you can have like maybe less self-confidence, but a lot of self-esteem. And sometimes the way that teachers will show it in schools is they read and they'll say the top of the tree, all the things you can see outside, like if you're really good in sports, if you're really good in, if you're getting great grades, if you're super popular. So you have a big upper part. Right. But the roots that you don't see, because there's never been any work on self-esteem, are like small.
Okay.
So the idea is that, when a big wind comes, you topple over easily.
Sure.
Whereas when you build self-esteem, which is the roots, you're much stronger. So there's a very interesting word or characteristic in Danish, which is super important, and it's called at hvile i sig selv. And it means to rest well within yourself.
Right.
And it's one of the most sought after characteristics.
Sure.
Because if when you meet someone who rests well within themselves.
Definitely.
They're the ones, they don't need to brag. They don't need to tell you how awesome they are. They don't need the validation from someone else, so this is where I think this is, also I was raised, and I think a lot of kids are raised, and I think we do it naturally as parents, constantly praising kids for what they're good at and encouraging them to, so children, what happens is they start to associate this with love.
Right.
So if I perform, I'm lovable. If I get good grades, I'm lovable. Right? Yeah, they don't get enough, right? It's kind of emotional. I mean, when you think about it, right? They're not getting as much, I'm lovable just because I'm who I am.
Right.
And when you grow up, the thing is that especially now, I mean, always, but especially now with the changing future and the job market and everything, if you are, I think you can do many things. You can do anything, right?
Yeah.
if you're very top heavy on the needing to show all the things you're good at, with less self-esteem, it becomes, the foundation is more porous. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, definitely. I think that that's a huge thing. I mean, that's how to help somebody be okay with who they are and feel okay. I mean, that way, so when a child makes a mistake, they know that that they're still loved, they're still cared about, they're still special, they're still important. I mean, that's
Right.
That's an amazing thing.
But I think that what's happened is that we think that we're giving them a lot of love by always encouraging them.
Right.
And we are, like I said, no parent, we're not doing it on purpose. It's just, this is also often how we were raised and how we were praised. And so we think that by telling them how good they are at certain things, we're building up, like I said, both self-esteem and self-confidence.
Right. Yeah. No, I think it's hard. Yeah, as a parent, to stop yourself and not say, I like the way you drew that, or that.
Right.
As opposed to noticing. Oh, I noticed that you've made the house blue.
Right. Or I mean, it's a place, for example, where parents can build self-esteem instead of self-confidence is actually in play.
Yeah.
So free play. Is one of the few places where you can be with a child and you don't have to assess them.
Right.
So it's about don't assess them. It's just be in the moment, play, let them, experience the moment together with them. And this in itself makes that they want to spend time with us, and they want to spend time in this environment where they're not assessed.
Yeah.
Right.
No, definitely. This is the overlying thing that I've learned, to be honest, through this entire series, is that the connection with the child, I think, is the very most important thing, the real, honest, loving, deep connection. So
yes,
that's running along with the same thing that you're talking about. Yeah.
Yeah. In this report that they came out last week, there was a study on over 9 countries, 13,000 parents and children, and the results were all in that more play in the week makes children happier, but also parents happier.
Nice.
And families happier.
But free play, I think that
free
needs
play.
to be said, not organized, going to a sport, going to a class. Yeah.
Exactly. And this is actually a big struggle for parents, because a lot of parents struggle with being able to be in the moment.
Definitely.
And not being distracted and not teaching something.
Right.
So I always say it's not quantity, it's quality.
Mm-hmm.
So even if for 20 minutes you can just get down on the floor and let them guide you, that will make a difference. But it's hard for a lot of parents.
Yeah. I think it's hard with all of our cell phones and whatever. You have to put it in the other room and make sure you cannot hear it ringing. Yeah.
Hide it.
Right. No, definitely. I love that. Oh, that's so important. I wish hopefully more parents will understand and work on that. That's definitely important. So playing with them, spending time uninterrupted, definitely important. And then, all right. So one of the things I think you started to talk about before a little bit was the way that the whole reframing, and, when a child starts to have issues being, acting up or whatever you want to call it. I know that, your method is not to come down hard and,
right.
stop it like that. But it seems like you're calling it reframing. So maybe if you could share with everybody what that means.
So I used to think that Danes had a superpower, because they all seem to do this. They're really good at reframing, which is basically, it's finding the positives in a negative situation.
Okay.
So it's not being overly optimistic, rose-colored glasses. They're much more like realistic optimists, but they're very, very good at finding, every picture has some positive detail in it.
Sure.
It doesn't mean you have to deny the negativity or that it doesn't exist, but you can choose to find the better side. So I think reframing is really, it's powerful for people, parents, and obviously very powerful for children, because the more you reframe with them, they grow up to do this naturally.
Okay.
And the way you choose to see the world affects the way you feel about it.
Okay. Sure.
So
No,
if you
I mean,
choose to,
it's
if
true
you
for
choose to
adults too.
yeah, totally. And I mean, it starts with us. They're going to learn it from us. They mirror us. So the better we get at being able to reframe work experiences, life experiences, our children, they will just pick this language up naturally.
Okay.
And that's what I feel like the whole Danish population has done. So this is just a learned thing over time. They don't teach this. This is just the parenting style, which gets passed on and on and on. And it's power. I mean, even my parents used to joke about my husband. He would always say, you know, there's no bad weather. There's only bad clothing.
I love it. Okay.
So it's about making, your words are very important.
Right.
So they really mean something. So don't use words cavalierly. We often think that we can just easily say, "Oh, she's so annoying," or "Wow, he's so obnoxious." Or a lot of people say these things without thinking.
Sure.
But children hear this, and often what happens is, instead of actually changing the behavior, it makes it. But they believe mom and dad say I'm like this, so I must be like this.
Okay. Definitely.
Okay, so the idea is, be very aware of labels, and negative labels in particular, and
Yes.
try to find the other side of that negative label.
Okay.
So I'm going to give you an example.
All right.
I love this example. This is just, for me, this is such a classic Danish husband reframer example. So we were, my son had a phase where he was, he needed to have a certain toy at all times.
Okay. Sure.
And, you know, it could have been a car, or, you know, whatever it was, it would be days where that he had to have it when he woke up, when he went to sleep,
Sure.
everywhere.
Yeah. No, we had those levies, we call them. Yeah.
Okay. Right. And it was very serious. So we left one day to go out of town for a barbecue, and we forgot this little car.
Oh no.
And oh man, we heard about it, you know, all day long. He was crying. He was upset. He was, you know, it was just nonstop.
Uh-huh.
And it was fine. So fine. We were driving home, and now he starts crying again about the car and making it fit. And I just was about to lose it, you know?
Yeah.
And I'm like, I'm a, and I look at my husband who's driving, and he looks at me and he smiles and he says, "I am so glad he's like this."
Okay.
And I'm like, what?
Right. What's wrong with you?
And he said, he's so determined. He never gives up. I mean, he's, you know, he keeps going and going and going. And this is going to be so good for him as an adult. It's going to be such a great character, you know, personality trait for him, that he's so persistent.
Okay.
And I was like, oh my God, you're serious. That's
Yeah.
amazing. That is, you know, that is reframing. And that's what my son hears, right? That I'm, you know, he doesn't hear something negative about himself, right? I mean, of course, obviously, you know, he's crying. And so we got home, and then it stopped. He got the car. It was fine. But the idea is like, find the positive side of your child's negative behavior, and then you will build that up in them instead of the negative labels. But it's true for us. It's true for our own beliefs about ourselves. It's true for how we talk about work. This is like really, really powerful, I think.
Well, and see, and I always would have thought that reframing was more, you know, when the child is upset about something, you try to just make them think about something else. Distraction is more what I would have thought of. But it's more of, reframing is more of the way an adult can choose to view it, and then help their child learn to think that way and learn their language.
Yes. And it's also true about how we talk about other people. So how do we talk about their friends? We can choose to find the better side of the situations. We, you know, instead of saying, "Oh, what a jerk," or "She's so mean," you know, we can say, "You know what? I wonder if she's hungry. You know how you feel when you're hungry."
Right.
right? So it's like helping see the better.
Yeah, and that's teaching them empathy then as well, which is
Yes, yes. They're,
so
they're very, very tied. Reframing and empathy are very tied.
okay. No, I love that. Oh my gosh. That is, I mean, because we work with the kids in my school on, trying to help them understand empathy. And we do it in that way sometimes. But I never really thought about it in the way that you've just explained it. So that's lovely. That would be something obviously that, help them as adults too. If we can have more people like that in the world, right?
But this is where, like I said, I think I think reframing changed me the most as a parent or as a person, really, because it made me aware of how I talk about my family, how I talk about, in front of our children, because remember, they're going to mirror us.
Right.
So you can say all you want to say to them, but they are going to do what you do.
Right. Definitely. Yeah.
So if you, I mean, the research shows clearly that, again, the way we describe the world affects how we feel about the world.
Yeah. Oh
And
no, I think, yeah. I think oftentimes we think that younger children are not hearing us. They're not catching on to it. There's no way they could possibly understand. They're too busy playing with their cars over there, but they're absorbing it, how we're
they're
being.
completely absorbing it. In Denmark, it's funny, they have a term for the parents in
Okay.
schools. They call them the silent classmate.
Oh,
because
definitely.
because because they know that their children, how they are speaking oftentimes is just a direct reflection of how parents are speaking. So sometimes they'll have classes for the parents in basically teaching them how to reframe and use empathy so
Yeah.
that it helps the class get along better.
Oh, I love that. Oh my goodness. That would be amazing if we could have more of that every.
Yeah, right.
Wow. Oh my gosh, that would make such a difference. Yeah, I mean, it's definitely so true because I'll meet the kids and sometimes I'll know one parent because they're the dropping off and picking up, and then eventually at like a holiday party or something, I'll meet the other one and I'm like, oh, that is where that child gets all that from. Like it's so, yes, it's so interesting. So I think if parents can remember that, because just like when a little tiny child is learning how to cook and clean and then they pretend to cook and clean, they're copying and mirroring. They're same thing with the way that we're speaking. And
100%. And I think where I would also give a lot of empathy to parents, and I would say it was a big eye-opening experience for me to realize how much of my language was just inherited from my own parents,
right, of course.
and their language was just inherited from their parents.
Right.
So I became aware of my patterns, like if I was particularly negative about something, or so many of my word choices were just like default setting,
Sure,
you
of
know.
course. Yeah.
And that's what's so interesting, and I think so powerful, and the real catalyst for any kind of change as a parent, because we don't get any courses for being a parent. It's the
Yeah.
hardest job in the world, but
And of
nobody
course that
teaches.
manual when you leave the hospital, right?
Well, there's a trillion, right? But at the end of the day, we
Yeah,
really learn from our own parents.
sure.
So I think when we say, okay, wow, I'm just going to choose two things that I want to truly change
Right.
about the way I was raised.
Hmm.
That's also keeping it simple, but then I think you really make big change.
Yeah, no, definitely. I love that. Oh, that was a great conversation. Yeah, we definitely were able to touch off. So I was going to chat with you about helping kids learn to be respectful, but I think that's encompassed in that. I mean, it's modeling it more or less.
Yes, that's what I was going to say actually
Yeah,
for that. How do we teach respect? We have to model it.
yeah. No, definitely. That was a wonderful explanation. I'm so glad that I asked you that. And all right, so one of the other things that I wanted to chat with you about. So we talked a little bit about free play and about types of praise, but I think that question I was going to ask you, what types of praise are helpful? It's almost don't praise them. More or less, just notice the way that
Yeah,
they're being.
yeah, and also notice your own language and how much we have a tendency to assess everything.
Right.
If a child is on a playground and it's like, "Mommy, look," you know, we don't have to say, "Oh, you're such a great climber."
Right.
We can just say, "That looks like fun."
Yeah.
You look like you're having fun.
Yeah,
But
you
it's
have
so
to control
natural for
yourself.
us. It's so natural for us. Or when they bring you a little scribble drawing and we
Right.
say, oh my God, you're such a good artist.
Right.
That's amazing. Really, I mean, I'd say Dane typically would say, wow, what were you thinking when you drew that?
Uh-huh. Asking
Or,
questions.
yeah, asking questions. What is it? Thank you.
Yeah. No, I like
So that everything they do doesn't have this slight kind of, then they start looking for it because it's like, oh, if I'm good at it, then I have love.
yeah, they're looking for
And
approval.
they're looking for approval, which is, I mean, it's all tied together, right? And since so many of these things are external, there are going to be times we're not good at things. There's going to be times we fail, and that's where it really hits the self-esteem if that hasn't been built strongly.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think, yeah, any time that we can get kids to understand and feel these things on the inside, then they can keep that with them for their life. I mean, that
Yeah,
way when they're off at school or at a play date or whatever, and we're not there, so they're no longer worried about our opinion, that now it's just their way of being, right? Because it's they just want to do those things because they know that that's the right way to be, and it doesn't matter what mom or dad thinks when they're not there, but they just, yeah, they have that internal
yeah, and less affected by what other people think.
right.
So, I mean, we all know the people that they'll tell you how awesome they are, right? And
Yes.
maybe they are, and they
Right.
probably are like super duper awesome, but you also sense how insecure they are,
Mhm.
that they have to constantly tell you that, you
Yeah,
know?
no,
And I think that is also what creates a little bit of disconnect anyway in our society, because
sure.
because it's not connecting when we talk about being awesome, right? Because
Right.
um, um, so it's also about this idea of being humble, and for Dane's, humility is like a huge value, and it's a value because bragging can make other people feel uncomfortable.
Sure.
So it's more about like also being aware of creating this connection by making sure that we can connect in more vulnerability rather than um, competition.
Yeah, no, and I think that's definitely one of the other things we were going to chat about is this whole idea of and I'll see if I'm going to say it right, Hyuga.
Okay. Yes.
Yeah, and so if you want to tell us a little bit more about what is that? What is Hyuga?
Huga is so it's one of the most Danish words there is. It is such a fundamental piece of their cultural fabric. I mean now it's becoming a global term. It's gone into the dictionary now in 2016, the English dictionary.
Okay.
Um, it's become really well known, and I'm really happy about it because I have to say that writing about Huga and understanding Huga, it took me about 15 years to figure out like exactly what it was for a non-Dane,
Okay.
and why I think it's so tied to happiness. So Huga, the definition of Huga is like coziness, an intimate environment, being together with nice food and candles. Danes love candles. A lot of candles going on in Denmark, and so this is sort of the outside of what Huga looks like. So they say or like cozy blankets and tea and
Oh, that sounds so nice.
yeah. So, but this is sort of what a lot of people think it looks like.
Okay.
So then I began to understand that what Huga actually is more of a psychological space.
Okay.
So it's a psychological space that you enter into with your family or your friends or your loved ones. And there's a sort of understanding that when you enter into this psychological space, it's called Huga, this psychological,
Right.
everyone agrees for this period of time to leave outside of Huga's door
Okay.
negativity, complaining, um, controversial discussions, no bragging. Um, Everybody helps out so that it's a team effort rather than one person getting stuck doing the work.
Okay.
It's very much about being together in a moment the present. So you can do things like share uplifting memories from your past, enjoy the food that's very present, play games. Danes love playing games.
Nice.
So the idea is that you have this moment together where it's like an oasis from all the other stuff that goes on.
Just being, right?
Just being, but connecting. So I always say it's not mindfulness.
Okay.
It's we-fulness.
Okay.
And it is so incredibly it is recharging for the soul. It sounds so simple, but it is so difficult for many families that we have these habits in our families. We don't even realize that we get together and we're complaining about Aunt Jenny or, work stress, or someone's talking a lot more than someone else. And all of this stuff is kind of slightly dividing us.
Okay, right.
Whereas Hyuga is about, for this moment, it doesn't matter if you've got good stuff going on in your life or bad stuff going on in your life. This is where we're coming together to be relieved from all that as a family.
Nice.
And it has completely changed my American family. It took them a while to sort of get on board, because
did you have to explain it to them, or did you
well,
model
when the
it for
book
them?
became a bestseller, they finally kind of listened. They finally took me seriously.
Okay.
No, but it's we were talking earlier, I have on my website, it's called the Hyuga Oath.
Okay.
And you can download it from my website. And it basically lays out the sort of rules, let's say, the philosophy of Hyuga. Right. And it's something that you can talk about as a family as a regular conversation.
Okay.
And a lot of people put it on their refrigerator, for example. Right. And it's just a way of saying, like I said, this doesn't mean that we have to always do this. We can complain and gossip and talk about politics all other times. This is just saying that for this dinner, for this breakfast, for this barbecue, for this time at the beach, we're going to take this hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, and we're going to leave all that stuff out.
Is it typically announced then? Like, this is, we're doing this now? Or?
In Denmark, it's not, because kids grow up with this. So again, it comes back to the legacy. They do what we do.
Right.
And so Danes don't have to, like, they light a candle and they know, it's Hyuga time, right? It's so much a part of their cultural fabric.
So typically is a candle the symbol then, or there's just many ways? It's
not the symbol, but I'll just say Denmark burns more, like the most candles in all of Europe, if not the world. They're huge candle consumers. It's such a big part of the way Hyuga looks, right? But I'm actually originally from Florida, so we don't need to light candles. It's not about the candles. It's truly about changing some of your habits and prioritizing this we time instead of me time. And what I have found, and I've seen it in Denmark, but I was amazed to see it with my own family. What I found was that it took us some time to kind of like do it, because my father has this tendency to complain about certain things, and he loves to wind you up about politics and all this stuff, right? So it took some time for us to really be like, no, let's do this, and focus on the kids and focus on the food, and everybody helps, and let's talk about good memories. We have a million good memories, and it makes you feel so good to remember the good times rather than the bad times.
I agree.
And so it took us a little time, it took us a couple of times to do it, but now it has become totally natural for us to have these Hyuga moments. And I see that my kids absolutely love it. It's like they gravitate towards you, because I think there's nothing they like more than drama-free time with their family.
I agree. Yeah.
They don't want to hear negativity.
Right.
They don't want to hear fighting.
Right. I love
and so the great thing is the idea is like, yes, you have to give up a little bit of yourself for the we. You have to stop thinking about yourself for a little bit of time, and your stress and your work, but it will be paid back to you, because the kids do it normally. I mean, I already see now that my kids will naturally gravitate towards pulling out a game or wanting to have that we time.
Yeah. I love that.
And that's what I think all of us want as we get older. It's a nice legacy to leave.
Yeah. So what do you recommend for a family that wants to start that? Maybe like picking one night a week, or do you have any recommendations on that?
Yeah, I would say, well, read the Huga chapter. It
Okay.
goes into more detail about, truly, it just talks a little bit more about the history of it. Um, and then really, I think the Huga Oath is a fantastic thing. Even if you don't read the chapter, just get the oath, because that talks a lot about what we just said. It's very easy to read. Then everybody can read it, and then just discuss, say, should we try this out?
Yeah.
Let's try it out for on Thursday night for an hour.
Yeah.
And that way, it's time limited. So even if you're super annoyed at cousin Bob or whatever, and you want to just, or you want to make a comment about something, it's time limited, and you're doing this for a purpose. And
Right.
I promise that by doing it once, twice, three times, you will see, first of all, how good it feels to walk away from one of these and feel really like, wow, that was nice.
Right.
And then you'll see how it's just like anything, it becomes easier and easier.
Nice. I love that.
And it becomes desirable. That's the thing. That's the crazy
Sure.
thing. Also with my family, it's like now we don't want to go back to our old habits.
Good. Very good.
Yeah.
That's good to hear. Oh, I love
So no, I can't say enough about Huga. And like I said, I think many people have started to hear about it. Every time I go back to the US now, I'm seeing Huga everywhere. So
Oh,
I want people to understand that it's not about stuff.
right.
It's actually not about the candle. It's not about the stuff. And I feel like that's where it's getting a bit twisted. It's
Well, I
really
think
about
it's easier for people, right, to have a
to
tangible.
understand. Yes, yes, yes. It's really the psychological space.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. But I think maybe, when you're starting out, you could take something tangible to help maybe get your mind to shift into
Yes,
that a little bit.
yes. Okay. So actually, to be perfectly fair, so last year I was a very very crazy year for me. I was so busy, and I didn't feel I had a lot of this time
Hmm.
to have Hugo with my family, and I was really stressed because it's also about moving away from that, right?
Right.
So what I started doing during a particularly busy time for a few months was I woke up really early, so like 5 in the morning, and and started to get myself kind of in that space. And I would light a candle at the breakfast table,
Yes.
so that at least for breakfast we had Huga, and the candle was the symbol in that sense. They knew that when they came down, we were gonna be able to be together in that time,
Sure.
in
Definitely.
in the weefulness. So there, of course, yes, there are some things that can help to understand that this is
Yeah.
that we're going to have this time.
Sure, definitely. No, I love that. Well, I think I could chat with you all day about all of this stuff, but I'm trying to keep these, in a certain amount of time for the audience so they can get back to their busy.
Sure, 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 sure,
Yeah.
sure.
So if people want to learn more about you, and I you said they can come and get the Hugo Oath off your website,
Yep.
and then you have your book they can order anywhere that books are sold.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yep.
anything else that you would recommend that they can help to learn more about the Danish way or about your information? Now
Mm,
you have a new project you're working on.
yes. No. So I'm coming out with the education book soon. No, I think really, I just would like parents to, yeah, really reflect on our culture. I
Yeah,
think that's really interesting. I think as we become more global and we have this amazing ability to see other cultures and what's working, I think the most powerful thing we can do as parents is to reflect on our own cultural default settings as well,
definitely.
and like question the competition and some of these things, and see that since happiness is such a massive thing for us as Americans,
Yeah,
I keep saying, like, here's a country 40 years in a row, top 3 happiest.
yeah,
Something is right there. Something is
right.
working. So even if we take a couple of things like stop over programming and really relax and play a little bit,
Yeah,
or learn to reframe, or try Huga, it doesn't have to be a huge thing,
sure.
but those are the things that will make a difference, because that's what's going to change the future.
I love that. Yeah, no, those all sound like very doable things. I mean, just putting a little bit of them into our family life, even, if you're not able to make a huge shift, just start with something, start somewhere. Right. All right. Well, thank
Yep.
you so much. I'm so glad we got to chat.
Okay,
And
well, thank you.
I hope everyone will go over to the website and learn some more, and definitely download that oath. It sounds like I would recommend putting it
Okay.
on your fridge. I love that. So everybody can see it.
Yeah, no, it works. Yes. So it's jessicajoellealexander.com. I don't know if we said the
Perfect.
website actually, but
Yeah.
um, well, thank you very much. I'm so happy that you're spreading these messages, and we need more people like you
Oh,
to get it out there.
well,
It's
keep
really
doing what
great
you're
what you're
doing. I
doing.
can't wait to see your next book. That's going to be amazing.
We'll talk about it when it comes out for sure.
Thank you.
Okay. Thanks so much. Speak to you soon.